All yours, Dan.
Okay, probably be good to have some background as to where this initiative came from. My personal background, I'm a farm boy. I grew up in the Central Valley of California and was there until I went into the Navy for flight training when I was 20 years old. So farming is dear to my heart, and it's part of my family's background for a number of generations. But it wasn't until I retired in 2013 I was able to really begin to focus on farming as more of a nutritionist food source, specifically in the country of Haiti. I was asked, my professional background after being in the Navy is as a project manager, program manager, and worked for several defense companies and commercial companies in that area here in Anne Arundel County. When I retired in 2013, I wanted to do something else, and so the Episcopal Church asked me to go to the country of Haiti as a program manager to look at education systems in the country of Haiti that were part of the Episcopal Church there. It's the second largest educator in the country of Haiti, with over 250 schools in the country of Haiti. And one of the schools that I worked with when I was there for a year was a agriculture technology college, a junior college as such, up on the north coast of Haiti, which is probably the richest farmland in the entire country. It's a coastal plain, about 35 miles wide and about 11 miles deep. And looking at it from my farming background, I realized that if properly cultivated and farmed, could probably feed the entire country if the farmland is that rich. Well, the school I was associated with there sits on 450 acres of land. It has been in existence since 1985, and through a 2-year curriculum, both in the field and in the classroom, educates and certifies agriculture technicians who then have a vocation and move into about all levels of agriculture operations in the country, all the way from being on the staff of the Ministry of Agriculture to independent farming in the country. And the purpose of the education is to equip them to not only be more effective farmers, but to be entrepreneurs as well in setting up more vertical agriculture operations rather than horizontal. If you understand what that term means. Anyway, I worked there for a year and came back, and then I was assigned as the project manager for that school, for the Episcopal Church, to do a major revitalization of the college. It had been badly deteriorated over time in terms of facilities and in operations itself. I did that kind of activity until 2018, and then my employment with the Episcopal Church in doing that was terminated, and I formed a nonprofit organization here in the state of Maryland to provide financial and technical assistance to the Agriculture College. And since that time, our nonprofit has been providing funding, working with a board of directors in Haiti that has the actual governance authority over the college itself. And as such, we have been able to establish farm and food projects and reforestation projects with USAID at the college. Right now, the college is in a major reforestation project, providing over 180,000 tree seedlings for reforestation of the hillsides. At the same time, we're doing our normal farming operations and education operations. That's my background in terms of more practical farming applications here in the recent years. But shortly after Mr. Pittman became the county executive here.
If I can interrupt, I want to introduce Bill. Hey, Bill, you got your mic on now. We'd like to say good morning to you. Dr. Bill Hubbard, he's a program leader for Environmental and Natural Resource Sciences as well as Sea Grant.
Great.
And I'm sure you can hear us now. I don't see his mic active yet. But thanks for coming on board, Bill. You can go ahead and try your mic if you'd like. Extension. Yeah. Program leader, extension.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Now, hello.
Good morning.
Sorry about that. Good morning. Yeah, thanks for the invite. Sorry I couldn't be there in person.
No problem, no problem. I think this will work just fine. Dan's right now giving us some background, and we've got some documents that we're gonna share as we get a little deeper. So we're just getting started, so you haven't really missed anything yet.
Okay.
And but thanks for coming on board. I didn't get any more information back from Chris or John Stubblefield or Chris Tellini or as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're gonna pop in or not. So
I can double check, but I'm sure that they've got some issues to deal with up there at IMET because they've got that working laboratory demonstration area set up in the basement. Toured it a couple weeks ago, and it's pretty impressive. Lots of tanks and energy needs and these things. So I bet you they're pretty preoccupied now, but I can reach out to see if anybody can make it.
okay, I did send an invite to everyone again this morning to the site. So if they're available, they'll probably see that and pop in. Anytime, and of course, as we get into discussion, anytime that you can offer that expertise around this area, aquaculture and greenhouse integration, that's something I need help with understanding, especially the logistics of the economics and the feasibilities, especially small scale, how to take it to small scale. I know there's a lot of work in this area. There's a lot of excitement in this area, so I just want to make sure that I understand the science the best that I can. Thanks, Bill.
Sounds good.
Yep. All right. Now turn it back over to Dan.
Okay, anyway, I was saying, shortly after Mr. Pittman became the county executive here in Anne Arundel County, I was asked to become a member of the Veterans Affairs Commission here in the county. I'm a retired Navy guy. And became more and more aware of, county level activities, including, based on my background, particular interest in food resources and so on. And what reason I was more focused in that area, even though I was working in Veterans Affairs, is for the county, had been paying attention to the every 3-year study on Anne Arundel County's poverty situation that is done by the Community Foundation of Anne Arundel County, CFAAC, and they put out an every 3-year study. It's under the title of Poverty Amongst Plenty. And I had read the 2015 report and saw what they had to say about county food deserts and the areas in the county that were affected as being food desert areas. And then I read in early 2019, they published their 2018 Poverty Amongst Plenty report, and what I saw was a worsening situation. More and more people in the county were living in those food desert areas, and more in-depth studies with regard to the impact that lack of access to adequate and affordable nutritious food was having in a major portion of our county population. But the Poverty Amongst Plenty report of 2018 reported that some 13% of our county population is now living in food deserts. This was an increase from 11% in 2015, going up to 2018 with 13%. That's some 75,000 people living in county food deserts, with some 1,400 kids in the elementary schools that are located in those deserts. And of course, we all know that lack of access to good, nutritious food has most impact on those early years. So we're really talking about a core of about 1,400 kids that we'd like to get better support to. So anyway, Mr. Pittman, later in his administration, appointed a new director of health for the county, and I had an opportunity to speak with him, and we talked about farming markets, of which there are 5 in the county, I believe, or 5 or 6, and of those farm markets in the county, we found out that only 2 will allow the use of SNAP or WIC for direct support of people who are below the poverty level. One of those is up in the Brooklyn Park area, and the other is right here in Annapolis, out on Riva Road. unfortunately, located well away from the food desert of Eastport, right here in Annapolis itself. So that's the food situation, and given my background in food, in farming, my interest in what was being shown in the Poverty Amongst Plenty studies put out by CAPC, my experience in Haiti working with people who are undernourished almost all the time, and having found out on a more practical basis of a program that was being offered to the agriculture college I work with in Haiti from an organization in Jacksonville, Florida called Fresh Ministries, who were offering to establish aquaponics units at the agriculture college in Haiti, and also establish an agribusiness economic development college right alongside the ag tech college that we already had in place. Became more and more knowledgeable of aquaponics and what was involved. It's what it took to get one in place, its productivity, and what was involved in establishing and operation aquaponics units. So that combination of experience and knowledge and background led me to sending a proposal to Mr. Pittman and his staff to look at the use of aquaponics urban farming units in our North County and other county areas of food deserts as a possible mitigating approach to bring affordable and accessible fresh foods into those county areas. And I presented in October. I met with the AEDC Commission in this area, the Agriculture, Farming, and Agritourism Commission, to present the information that I had put into the proposal to Mr. Pittman. That proposal and its initiative having been sent to the AEDC Commission by Jennifer Purcell, who's Chief Staff for Mr. Pittman, for further evaluation. So this meeting today, I understand, is in follow-up to that presentation I made in October, and so that there we are as to why we are here today. And I think what the message that Dave Myers put out about why we're meeting today, then goes to the point of looking at this in more depth. Now, let me tell you what I've done subsequent to the October meeting, and not just preparation for this meeting, but to get more and better information about what this is. Matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I was in Jacksonville, Florida at the Fresh Ministries organization there, and spent all morning in their aquaponics unit there in East Jacksonville. And just an aside, why East Jacksonville? Several years ago, when a lot of U.S. industry left the United States and headed to overseas, to China in particularly, the East Jacksonville area, which was heavily in the heavy industrial area in that city, and very, very predominantly an African American and Hispanic community, providing the workers in that industrial area, all of that business left East Jacksonville, disappeared, and with it went everything that goes with an area that has money. It became a food desert. It became a high crime area, very drug-ridden area, and as a result of that happening, the Fresh Ministries Consortium, which is made up of business, sports, churches, and other banks and other organizations in Jacksonville, was put together to revitalize East Jacksonville. And one of the things they took on was the food desert. So they established aquaponics unit there in East Jacksonville under a nonprofit title of forgot the name of it. Anyway, it's a nonprofit organization that is running an aquaponics unit there that has two purposes. The first purpose is to, in fact, produce the food, the fresh foods, mainly leafy vegetables, that are immediately available to the people in East Jacksonville at a very low cost and in good abundance. So the second purpose is it is an education supporting unit, works very closely with the Escambia County schools, and a very large portion of the product that comes out of the aquaponics unit goes directly into the schools, the public school system right there in the Jacksonville area. They also have a working relationship with Florida State College Jacksonville that has an aquaponics vocational technology training program in place, and it acts as a place for practical field training for students who are going through the VOTEC program there at Florida State College Jacksonville. Anyway, I spent a good portion of the day with the unit, not just seeing how the unit operated and so on, but asking a lot of in-depth questions that I thought would be addressed in a further examination of this proposal here in Anne Arundel County. So that was one initiative I took, was to find out a lot more about what was in place and how it operated and what it took to make something like that work. The other part of the work I've done is to look at practical experience of what is going on here in central Maryland, and that is relevant to putting something like an aquaponics unit in place in our food desert areas here in Anne Arundel County. First thing I found was that in 2015, a major study was done in looking at small-scale raft aquaponics systems in Baltimore, Maryland. It's a study that was done by David Love, Michael Ewell, and Laura Janello, and I have provided a copy of this report to Dave Myers that he can post to you all. But it did a 2-year study of the practicality of installing and operating aquaponics units in Baltimore, which, you know, is much more relevant to us than saying something that operates in Jacksonville, Florida, where it's fairly temperate. And this one went through winters and so on, and they had the opportunity to look at, you know, all the parameters that has to do with operating an aquaponics unit here in our area. It's a thorough report. You will see in its abstract and its conclusions. Its conclusion was that operating aquaponics units in this area is practical. It is on the profitability side, mainly from the plants, with the fish components that provide the nutrients for the plants to grow being fairly neutral in cost, but essential to the units themselves because the fish provide the nutrients that the plants use instead of using chemical fertilizers or otherwise. But you all have access to this report. Dave has it. We can send it to you, and you'll see what a unit operating in this area looks like in terms of its energy requirements and so on. That's a fairly thorough report. The second thing I've included here with Dave is a report that appeared in the recently in the Delaware State News publication. It is a story that appeared in January this year, January 13th of 2020, and it talks about an aquaponics unit that's taking shape in Dover, Delaware. It's called 302 Aquaponics, and it's a complete story of this gentleman, Doug Wood, who has established an aquaponics operations unit there in Dover. Obviously, Dave Woods feels like this is a profitable business, or he wouldn't be doing it. So that's a very practical implementation of aquaponics in our area. Please read through that, and you'll see what Dave and his family is doing with regard to aquaponics production there in Delaware. So that's the two examples I want to bring to you. First of all, the major study done in Baltimore showing this is a very practical thing to do in our area, and then for somebody in our cultural or climatal area is in fact taking this on as a business. So that's the information I'm going to bring to you today. The last piece I will give you is also in follow-up to the meeting in October, and we'll also this information we'll gather today. Is I'm meeting with Mr. Kip Kunzman, who is the Dean of Vocational Training at Anne Arundel Community College on the 27th of this month to discuss with him the establishment of Aquaponics Vocational Technology Training Program at Anne Arundel Community College, which he's very interested in doing so. So, but even, might you say, at a lower, more elementary level here in Anne Arundel County, North County High School has had for some time in place a small-scale aquaponics program going on under the head of one of their science teachers up there, Mr. Wozniacki. And they have been experimenting and doing very small-scale aquaponics in North County as well. So in effect, you already have a student feeder program here in our area, which is already in place to implement something like this. Okay, and in the middle of all this, the big question is, what am I doing? What is my role in this? Even though I was labeled as an entrepreneur, I'm really not. This is not a business for me. This is not a business that I want to get into. I'm too old to do that to start with, to do something like that. My role, as I see it, is to bring to you here in the Ed Committee and to the AEDC as a whole, as assigned by the Chief of Staff to Mr. Pittman, to bring to you all the information that I can about what this is, how it can address the specific issue we have here in the county, which is worsening in regard to our food desert situation, and to encourage that Anne Arundel County take on as a governmental responsibility a practical approach to start bringing adequate and affordable good food in these food desert areas where the grocery stores that have these supplies have flooded because of the poverty levels in these schools. Well, my role is to encourage that this county get off its tail and start addressing what is in fact a worsening situation.
You know, Dan, I grew up in Brooklyn Park, so I know what Brooklyn Park was when I was a child. That actually had a farming community right down in the Belgrove region. They still had farmers, and they had every spring you'd have someone bring the wagons up out of that area with strawberries, and of course summer moved into melons and sweet corn, and it wasn't that long ago.
I know.
And so it's amazing to see how we have abandoned the opportunities for agriculture as we ever increased our circumference of the greater Baltimore area as it has come out. And we've abandoned agriculture in that whole urban, suburban sprawl. And in reality, it wasn't that way from the beginning.
Yep.
Agriculture was embedded right in the city in the beginning. And so I think that's what's needed to see is a revitalization of that opportunity. And I look at all the, you can fly a plane over top of anywhere, and you can look down at Brooklyn Park, and you can look down at Glen Burnie, and you can say there's plenty of opportunity for agriculture.
Yes, there is.
And so there's no reason why there's all kinds of nooks and crannies of open area. You think it's all built out, but it's not. Mm-hmm. And all these little ventures could be in there.
The thing is, the county has substantial areas of owned property in these areas.
Yeah.
Whether it's a school or other areas the county owns. So it's not as if there aren't places to put these things down, and they're not that large. The aquaponics unit I visited in Jacksonville, Florida, and have known about for some time, is a 6,000 square foot unit. 6,000 square feet. Turns out almost 90,000 plants a year. Puts out 6,000 pounds of a tilapia Nile perch breed fish a year. This is substantial production. They get 4 and 5 crop turns per year.
Yeah. The real issue is the logistics.
Yes.
You say you're not the entrepreneur, but we need the entrepreneur because the county government can't do this either. So it has to be an organization or an entrepreneur that starts the process. And I would rather see it privately owned than publicly owned. And so we've got to incubate that process, and that is always the issue.
What I did find out from the Jacksonville people is that there are substantial grant opportunities from USDA to do exactly this.
So the question then to the Ag Committee is, what is the Ag Committee's role in this? Trying to facilitate, and that's all we can really do is give directives and facilitate to the issue, and find out how we can best utilize our.
I think right now, I think the most important right now is advocacy, is to, where this is like a one-man band right now, me.
Yeah.
I think gathering a group that has the credit and the recognition of Anne Arundel County Agriculture Extension. I think that the county health department needs to be involved in this in a reasonable way, as does Anne Arundel County Public Schools and the community college. There needs to be something like the Fresh Menu Streets Consortium gathered around this, in the same way that Jacksonville gathered up their business, their sports, their faith communities, and put together something to address something like the worsening situation in North County. What I'm doing right now is I'm trying to gather advocacy, so that what gets back to Jennifer Purcell and to Stuart Pittman is, we got a problem, we have a practical way of addressing it, and we're trying to sort out a way to make that happen.
Yeah, one of the areas that I represent, of course, is agriculture education, and I'm glad you mentioned North County High School. I was aware of that program. There are other small pilots like that, but that's a place to help educate people early on to maybe grow into that kind of business. So I could offer that kind of advocacy. Also at the community college, I don't know if you knew Dr. Steve Alstock. He just retired, but he's an environmental person who has a strong background in agriculture. And they just built a new building over there. They have a lot of programs already going that I think would kind of fit into training people for this line of work and serving maybe as a, what should I say, an incubator for businesses to get something like that started. The president over there too has been very supportive of ag and issues dealing with the environment. So those two areas I could help make contacts, and I think that's a way to help grow and educate people in this whole business. The high school piece would take it to a certain level. The community college and extension would help train people who want to get into this kind of business, and maybe Frederick County, for example, has an incubator program where people who want to start businesses, the county government works with them. I'm not sure whether you do here, but if you do, you might want to add one or two areas like this, whether it be aquaculture, hydroponics. And the other thing I want to mention, this gal right here, Laura Janella, she's the lead person over at Great Kids Farm.
Oh, great.
So, and she's really dynamic.
She's an author of that report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Neith,
All
a
right.
question for Neith and Bill. Do we have any operating aquaculture greenhouse systems that you're aware of in the Baltimore region?
Bill probably knows more about this than I do. I was just talking with Jackie Takis and Adam Frederick about their demonstration setups.
Well, I know that
I don't know of anything, and yeah, Neith, I don't know if those are inclusive of kind of some greenhouse aquaculture systems or not, or if they were just looking at basic aquaculture production. I'm not sure. I don't think they're working in that area. So yeah, I don't know. That's why I was hoping that Chris would be on board. I sent a little message off to see, because most folks are located right in Baltimore, and they would know in the region.
Other than Jackie and Adam's work in the schools, the ones I'm familiar with in the region are, let's see, Johns Hopkins has a demonstration aquaponics, so the fish and the greens facility. I think they shut it down temporarily when they lost their farm manager, and I'm not sure if they've opened it up again yet. Haven't been back recently. Then down in Prince George's County, there's a faith-based organization, a church, Southern Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, that has a hydroponic facility in their church. That's a franchise of Invista Farms, and I know they have more hydroponic stuff out on the Eastern Shore. But they're the hydroponic, so no fish involved. And then in Baltimore City, the other related things, there's a lot of small-scale hydroponic microgreens producers, but again, those are hydroponics, no fish involved.
Years ago, we had one in Anne Arundel County, Mr. Lee, and he had a pretty extensive tilapia and greenhouse operation in Anne Arundel County, and he had a lot of technical issues, mainly with of course this was more than a decade ago, probably 15 to 20 years ago, so he was really cutting edge of the science. He had problems with water quality and fish health, and then at the same time he had production level wasn't high enough to recoup the cost, and so he basically folded. But it was very early in the technology, and I know the science has extremely advanced since that time period. And his main problem was heating, and then issues with water quality to the point where the fish health was impaired and the growth of the fish was subpar. And so maybe it was the wrong species, maybe it was just his technical ability at the time. And that's kind of leads me to where I'm at now. Are we at that level where we could make a turnkey operation where people could be successful with, let's say, limited scientific knowledge? And that's always an issue with these systems. Whether hydroponic or getting even more technical when we start putting seafood into that system.
Well, I have two pieces of information I think are relevant. There is a major industrial level hydroponics company establishing a very, very large hydroponics facility out at the old Sparrows Point facility.
Gotham Greens, yes.
It's huge. It's hydroponics. It is not aquaponics. And if you think about the difference between the two, they're going to be using chemical fertilizers to in fact grow their product because they don't have something like a fish source to get that nutrient. There is going to be tremendous waste. I think they're using as much solar as they can to use passive electricity gain, and I think they're using a lot of LED lighting to provide the right, light frequencies to enhance growth. So some of the technologies move forward is in just the energy consumption, which is being mitigated somewhat with the use of LED. And there's something at the Never Fresh unit down at the Jacksonville, Florida, is moving in the implementations that are coming out of their organization. And Fresh Ministries is extending their hydroponics unit installations overseas in Swaziland. They're busy putting units in place in Swaziland and in South Africa right now. They are building units out at the University of the Virgin Islands in the U.S. Virgin Islands. In September, they'll start installing an aquaponics unit at their aquaculture college in Haiti. The Bahamas has asked Fresh Ministries to do the same thing in the Bahamas. The Never Fresh group was up in Georgetown with Georgetown University last month. Georgetown University is looking at putting in aquaponics units at Georgetown and Washington, D.C. So you have this major hydroponics facility going up in Sparrows Point. That looks to me like employment opportunity when people understand how to operate a very large industrial, and can go into industrial greenhouse test. So this kind of farming, although we're calling it urban farming, it's more than urban farming. It's industrial level as well, and it's beginning to grow in our areas. And technology is coming forward to make it better. Now, you said something about not having the right fish. What the Never Fresh people found out was a hardier breed, which was a combination of tilapia and Nile perch, was to be used, not tilapia. It's a faster growing, it's a more meaty fish, and it withstands temperature change much better. One of the things that's been kind of an Achilles heel to aquaponics over the years and increased the complexity of operating these units has been the necessity to hold water temperature levels within a very tight range for the fish. With this combination breed that the Never Fresh people are using, they find they don't have as much of that sensitivity to deal with. As far as water quality, obviously when you start the unit up, you have to bring in outside water, which comes out of normal water supply and so on. What the Never Fresh people do is they basically isolate that water and then filter it and treat it so that what goes into the fish tanks, which then almost self-supplies once the loop is established between the fish and the plant, and the plants themselves, they lose very little water to evaporation, and they have minimal problems with continuing water quality problems because they are maintaining the water quality within their hydroponics, aquaponics loop. So, like I said, the technologies move forward, and you see a guy like this fellow Doug Wood over in Dover, Delaware, who's jumping on that and sees a very practical, profitable approach, doing it from that standpoint. I will say this. The aquaponics unit I was able to visit down in Jacksonville is not an industrial production make-profit unit. It is an education support unit, although it's one of its major purposes is to be a nutritious food source for people of East Jacksonville and to the public school system in that area. They don't see themselves as a unit that has to make a lot of money, okay? I think what would have to go in place here in Anne Arundel County, especially with support of Anne Arundel Community College, if they put a vocational training unit together, there needs to be something like the Jacksonville unit to support the community college, which is basically train the entrepreneurs, understand the science, understand the technology that's involved, and has for its major purposes producing those entrepreneurs and that technological basis to do this. If somebody comes out of that process of an entrepreneurial bent, then you get into a situation where somebody is establishing an operating unit to make money. And this is where the Baltimore study comes in heavily, and it says for industrial production purposes, your product is going to be the plants. The fish situation is going to be neutral, but essential to the operation. So you're kind of looking at two different views of an aquaponics unit. If these units go into our food desert areas like North County, not only do you have the food production and availability of the foods that you want into that area to address food desert, you also have the employment opportunities right in those communities where employment rate in the county is the lowest, or is the highest, the highest here in the county. So it's more than just putting food sources. It's a community that's starting to stand on its own 2 feet and on its own feet in 2 feet in its own ways. There's just more to it than just a food supply. There's community which begins to work its better way out of poverty, having access to good food, which is essential to their children's nutrition. I mean, there's just a number of things that says something like this seems to be a good fit. That's all I'm saying.
I have a question, maybe for everyone to think about this. Bill, especially maybe when we think about aquaculture, do most businesses that look into this as developing it, let's say for at least marginal profit line so that they sustaining, do they start out with hydroponics and incorporate aquaculture, or do they start out right from the beginning thinking of I'm producing fish or seafood in line with my greenhouse vegetable production? Is it kind of a staged process of development where they're kind of learning the loops with the production of the let's say the greenhouse products first, get into hydroponics, and then eventually evolve into aquaculture? Or how do you see that? What would be the best approach in that? That's my question.
Yeah, no, that is a good question. And from my experience, and granted, I've only been on board here a little over a year, but the programs that I've been associated with have been pretty much aquaculture first, looking at, in particular, these are larger scale programs. So what happened last year was NOAA a request for proposals in aquaculture, and in particular, there's great interest in Atlantic salmon, and so we were successful in receiving that grant. It's a multi-state, multi-regional, almost national project involving several universities: Wisconsin, Stevens Point, Maine, Maryland, UMBC, and it's pretty much primarily settled on recirculating aquaculture systems, basically land-based systems in the Atlantic salmon world. Having said that, one of our big private partners has a system, and I don't know if it's strictly defined as aquaponics or not, but they've got, they're raising salmon, but they also have green using that water to let, so, in effect, it is aquaponics, I guess, right? Two separate but related production systems. So I've just been working with the larger scale at this stage, but the larger scale, I think, look mostly at the fish production first, and then integrating the agricultural aspects, the hydroponics aspects after that. But that's larger scale. I've not worked with any of the smaller scale groups here in Maryland.
When you say, when we think smaller scale, we're kind of thinking like micro unit. What would be, you think would be that level? What size frame would be?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Yeah.
I just sit here wondering.
To be honest with you, but yeah.
You have some large greenhouse operations already in the county, so you have money already invested in other structures, and you have some smaller ones as well. Is there a group of greenhouse growers, for example, like you have landscape contractors already in place, that maybe this could be presented to, and maybe could take them out to Wilmington or someplace to look at some operations, and then see if they would devote a greenhouse to it, or could add a piece on, or it would be an area that they would be interested in growing, because they already have a whole lot of knowledge in terms of growing plants and operating the greenhouse structure and all that kind of stuff. That might be a target group to talk with and say, hey, here's an idea. Hey guys, what do you think?
Yeah. That's a really good point, David. Another thing coming to my mind was the Atlantic salmon, was that as a restock program, or is that for a production food program? The Atlantic salmon initiative.
It's food production. Food production.
Okay.
Yeah, another thing is, I sit here, I think of where the oyster
That's
group was
come a long way.
some years ago, where it was only, and now it's on land and heavily used, or catfish farming. I think this is another one that's on the way of blossoming.
Are there any oyster fisheries that are using hydroponics or aquaponics systems?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Your guy on the Eastern Shore that just retired, Extension, what was his name, University of Maryland Extension, his work was mostly oysters. He served on the environmental council a while.
Oh, Don.
I mean
Oh no, did Don retire?
Don Merritt.
Well, I was thinking he did. Maybe he just went off of our board, but he would be able to maybe help answer that too, because he's very resourceful with helping us get.
Yeah, and don't forget our oyster aquaculture is not, to my knowledge, all the leasing going on is in the water. So it's not, they don't have big tanks like we do with the salmon.
Okay, yeah.
But there are the spat and the larvae work that's done on land and in big tanks. I don't know how that might lend itself to an aquaponics program, but most of the shellfish oyster aquaculture is, cages, column cages, or bottom type cage work, actually in the bay, in the water.
Yeah, right. And surprisingly enough, Haiti has the same approach in the major lake that forms part of the border between the Dominican Republic and Haiti. They have a very large in the lake fish growing operation going there as well. So.
Nia's here. I just wanted to second something Mr. Tuttle said a few minutes ago. From my experience working with growers in Baltimore City, Whether they're growing with hydroponics or outdoors on vacant lots, there's, I think, two kinds of activities happening, right? There's development of an industry that's profitable, and then there's also community economic development and workforce development. And usually those are separate organizations and separate businesses, because as we're aware, it's not a shortage of food that's causing the food deserts. We grow plenty of food in the U.S. It's an unemployment situation. It's a poverty situation. So provide the urban farms that provide foods in their communities, it's not profitable for the grocery stores to be there, so it's not profitable for the urban farms either to grow food for people who don't have a lot of money. So those tend to be nonprofits that are doing workforce development, which is really important, but also really challenging. You've got to do a lot of case management. And then on the other side of things, there's the development of the industry, which is what Dave's talking about with developing those larger commercial scale facilities. And hopefully someday that industry will be able to employ people who are in those workforce development programs. But right now it's really important with the workforce development programs that do exist to cross-train for transferable skills to other industries as well, like the landscaping industry and food processing, which currently have more jobs. Hopefully, eventually, the large-scale commercial urban agriculture will have more jobs. But for the people who are in trainings, this year, we want to make sure that there are other career opportunities for them.
Yeah, good points, Nia. I think when we think about tax dollar spending to support, that community development and opportunity development and incubation and things, those typically can be dollars well spent, but they can also be misused too, with no end results that help the situation. And so to me, I'm always thinking that, it's not about giving someone the fish, right? It's about teaching them how to fish, right?
You're right.
And grow the fish and all those kind of things. And so if somehow we can make this scalable so that an average household could put in some kind of a unit of production or a neighborhood, a number of people involved in a cooperative or something like that, that they actually then share in not only the production and the gain of the knowledge of that, but also the value of the products and things. And so that's always the goal. They're just very hard to achieve goals unless they're economically viable. And then that economically viable portion is the most difficult.
Well, the economics that I've been able to find out, especially through the Jacksonville unit, is they took out a $250,000 loan, commercial loan, there in Jacksonville to build the 6,000 square foot unit they have in operation. And they were able to retire that note, not from the production of the aquaponics unit itself, but through the larger Fresh Ministries organization that was there in Jacksonville. They were able, through donations and stuff, they were able to retire the note. So the basic information, it's somewhere in between $200,000 to $300,000 to put a unit of that size in place. And like I said earlier, one of the things I found out in talking with the director of the Never Fresh organization there is that there are now USDA grants available to, in fact, do that, to receive that money and put those units in place. The other thing about the Jacksonville unit, it is a USDA certified unit in terms of food production, so they can, in fact, sell food into the community at a low price, as well as provide the foods into the public school system there in the county. They're very carefully certified and inspected and controlled by USDA, sure that proper sanitation and food handling procedures are in fact in place. So there are safeguards to make sure that what comes out of those units is in fact fully out.
Yeah, when you mention loans, I think of the farm credit system, the farm credit banks. They would probably have a good feel for where loans are currently out there with somebody who has the expertise to do the kind of thing we're talking about that could serve as, role models or help us develop something like this. But farm credit being the largest lender of money for agriculture would be a source that I would think would be good to pursue. You know your people. I know our mid-Atlantic people.
They would.
I also asked the question of, okay, now you have it built, how long does it take to get one in operation? Because there are some fundamentals that have to be done after you get the unit built. There is a necessary buildup of the appropriate bacteria within the system. And of course, getting water quality established, all of that. And he said as early as 4 months after opening the unit to get it into operation, to as long as 6 months from the time that you have the building established and everything, is you're in full production within 4 to 6 months. But there is a time, you have to get the proper bacteria and built into the system. The bacteria's purpose is to take the fish waste and to go through 2 nitrification processes to turn it into the nutrients that the fish need, that the plants need. The plants, of course, soak up those nutrients and basically clean the water stream. At that point, there is a solids filtration process which takes any other resultant solids out of the system, and that water is circulated right back into the fish tanks again. So after you get your initial filling of the system of available commercial water, after that point, there's very little consumption of commercial water coming into the system. And also, as a result, there is no waste. There is no waste coming out of these systems. In terms of things that enter the local county waste stream, it would be when you're preparing the produce for consumption. There's a certain amount of trimming of the plants and stuff, and that goes into mulch availability. So from an ecological standpoint, once these systems are up and running, these are very ecologically neutral units to run. And especially if you use passive solar and passive both for heat. So up here we have to consider heating for the systems. If we had passive solar to collect heat into the units, as well as passive solar to collect electrical power to run the units, once again, these units are very self-sustaining, even to the point that excess electrical energy is sold back into the local utility system. So depending on how large a unit you put into the system.
Dan, I know you had a number of documents, and I thought we could flash them up
Yeah.
if there's any highlights that you'd like to make about some of the documents before we send them out to the group. This one here, Aquaponics Agribusiness Training Center Business Incubator. Anything you'd like to share about this one?
Well, that's a first look at what can be done here in the county. Now, this is basically an approach of what would happen at NRL Community College. This is what I'll be discussing with Kip Kunzman at the vocational training center there at the community college later this month.
Okay.
That would describe very much what the unit at Jacksonville looks like. Okay. But I think you would not want to have a unit that operates strictly on all these principles when you're talking about a unit that you want to mainly focus on food production. Yes, it would be available for school groups to come through for education purposes and things like that, but its focus would not be on education. It would be on getting as much food into the community as you possibly can.
Okay. Now, note the other documents. Let's take a look at the other documents. Let's see. We saw the Dover, Delaware. Do you want to see that? Anything you want to share about that one again?
No, I think that's worth a good read. Here's somebody who certainly sees the practicality and the profitability of getting into this business.
And this was, the fellow was
Doug Wood.
Doug Wood.
Over at 302 Aquaponics.
So this is Doug Wood here with his, and he developed basically, now, aquaponics. So he, right from the beginning, he went right into fish and produce right in the beginning.
He established that nutrient basis, and then he started growing plants.
And what is the size factor? What size is he at? Where is he at?
It doesn't say in there, but from the size of the fish tanks, you go down further down, you see a picture of the fish tanks.
Yeah.
It looks to me like it's around that 6,000 to 8,000 square foot unit size is what it looks
So
like.
he's got a 15,000 square foot greenhouse.
Yeah.
And then tanks to basically Oh, that's,
Yeah.
okay,
So he's got a facility that's more than twice the size of what I saw down in Jacksonville.
okay, so about a third of an acre greenhouse. Pretty good,
Yeah.
that's pretty good size.
That's very good size.
Yeah, that's,
Now, this tells me if a 6,000 unit could put out 90,000 plants a year, you know, scale it up to a 15,000 square foot facility. This guy is really pushing out the product.
302. And he does organic lettuce, tilapia, and honeybee. Honeybee hives. Okay, so now he's got an interesting operation there.
And this kind of parallels what Mr. Wisniewski has done up at North County. He's not just looking at aquaponics, he's looking at all kinds of urban farming, beekeeping, all kinds of stuff.
Okay, and we have, let's see, Ed committee, that's your meeting notes. So this one I had up before, this was kind of your meeting outline, I think.
Yeah.
Your note outline.
I think so.
Yeah, so this was your note outline.
Just, it was a brief set of bullets
Okay.
based on what happened in October and what has happened since October.
And like you say, 13% right now are kind of in the food desert region, and that's substantial.
Yes, it is.
It is hard to believe that
You see
we've
that
got
number,
that
it's
much.
almost
Yeah.
75,000 people.
Yeah, my old neighborhood, Brooklyn Park, is going through some real troubles. The thing I want to highlight in here again. Let's see, we got just a lot of things that you mentioned. So what native fresh, East Jacksonville, 302, Baltimore scale. So let's go ahead. What other you had? Another document there. Let's take a look at that. I just want to get through these documents. And I'll send all these out to everyone. Energy and water use on a small scale.
That's the ultimate study.
Okay, so let's look at this one.
And that's really useful because that's really right here in the environment, seeing
Okay.
what it really takes to put one of these together. There's a lot of good engineering information in here on how to size and how to estimate your operation.
Okay.
Another model that sounds somewhat related to the community college proposal you're talking about is the farm fish and food incubator out on the eastern shore that Chris Clubb is the manager there. I forget. Met a couple people from there, but I know we've been involved as a university with them.
Farm fish and food. What was it? Farm fish and food.
Yeah, it's F3 Tech is their abbreviation.
Free tech.
And that's located where on the shore?
Let me look. I'm looking at their website right now.
Is that a private or is that part of the youth center or?
They're located in Easton. So they're more of a business incubator organization. So they're not a production facility, but they do startup support for farm fish and food technology companies
Okay.
and entrepreneurs.
So this and this one that we're looking at now on the screen from Baltimore, Dan, is it in operation or is it just a research?
They ran it as a research project for 2 years and then they
Okay.
closed it down. Did the information together they wanted to go after and then produce this report.
Okay. And who was that? Was it a college, university? Who was running this study?
Is that the one that Laura helped produce?
Yeah, that's one more. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dave, I said she's the lead person up at
Okay.
Great Kids Farm right now.
Large and okay.
So, yeah,
Okay.
and she attends our Maryland Council Pride Ed meetings.
Very good. Okay. And so then we had let's see, go back.
You know, I don't think they ever said what organization they were associated with. It just simply says that sited in a 116 square meter hoop house in the grounds of the Clyburn Arboretum in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes, I've been to visit them. They were open again for a couple years recently,
Oh,
but they're closed right now to redesign.
okay, so good. We have a really good technology.
What was the size on that unit?
I'm sorry.
What was the size you said?
They sit it in square meters. 116 square meters.
So kind of a small little area.
Yeah.
One high tunnel.
Oh, one high tunnel, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, Laura's a Great Case Farm, been there maybe a year and a half, so I think probably when she did this report, she was with another agency.
Says the system was designed by Nelson and Pate Incorporated out of Montello, Wisconsin.
Now, here you have a number of questions that came out of the Jacksonville, I guess, questionnaire.
That's all the questions I was asking them in Jacksonville.
Okay. So questions for the Jacksonville facility.
I thought these would be the kind of questions we would want to know.
Sure, absolutely.
From what I've heard from the hydroponics, aquaponics folks related to your LED lighting question, it's definitely preferable to use as much natural light as you can in a high tunnel in a greenhouse, and to supplement with LED lighting.
Yes, very much so.
Absolutely.
It was a significant concern for the First Ministries group as they're doing these aquaponics system installations in underdeveloped countries where there is a paucity of available public utilities. They have to operate strictly off of solar panels, so they try to minimize as much as possible the power drain to run the pumps and stuff that are in the system.
Did they, were they sufficiently able to answer the questions that you felt?
I got a lot of good answers.
Okay.
Yeah, and one of the things that I found out by the end of it, and talking with the unit operator, a young woman graduated from the University of Florida, is that they are putting together a curriculum that they're using to educate folks in aquaponics there in Jacksonville. And they said that once they got that curriculum put together, it would be available to us as well. So I think there's some nice mentoring that we can get from the folks who are, elbow deep in this stuff.
So what I'd like to do now is kind of focus on kind of next steps for the Ag Committee and what we want to take to the Commission, what you would like to see the Ag Committee take to the General Commission at large. So Bill, and Neef, just to let you know, we have the Stuart Pittman has a advisory committee, Anne Arundel County Ag Advisory Committee at large. And all of its members then number subcommittees, and we have a subcommittee that's the Education Committee, Agricultural Education Committee. Dave's on it, I'm on it. A number of others that aren't present here right now are on that, about 5 or 6 of us. And on that committee, though, we try to look at opportunities in the arena of education for the committee at large, and then we're going to report back. We were given this task to take a look at this proposal and potentially what we could do with aquaponics and in the area, and not just that, but to solve anything to solve this food desert issue. I think is probably the crux of this meeting today. This being aquaponics could be a very viable portion of that, as well as a number of other things that could be very viable in solving this food desert. So the Ag Committee now has a task then to take Dan's suggestions and maybe some other suggestions and go forward back to the Ag Commission at some point with some recommendations that would ultimately probably be adopted and go to Stuart Pittman, our county executive, and what we might want to do to move forward. So now we got to come up with some kind of strategy, I think, and what we would like to recommend to the committee at large from this Ag Committee on this issue of food deserts and aquaponics being a portion of that. Or any other production. So anyway, I'd like to kind of focus on that as we wrap up today. What would be our next steps as the Ag Committee? How should we further investigate this opportunity or other opportunities for the food desert issue? And then how we're going to report back to the committee at large. That's what we need to kind of think about right now.
I think you all in the committee and the committee within the commission. I also operate within a commission, the Veterans Affairs Commission. We try to focus in on things of chance benefit of the veterans here in the county. We're kind of in similar numbers. Almost the same number as the folks in the food deserts. We have something like 85,000 active military and veterans living here in the county. Not surprising that three military bases.
Yeah.
It's a great place to live, so this is where people end up. But anyway, the kind of things I think would be helpful if this is a reasonable thing to be looking at is whether or not this committee thinks this is in fact a practical approach. I think that would be essential conclusion to go to that. The other thing, recommendation I would ask you all to consider is that the commission that has been assigned the task to look at this by the county executive's office recommend that a consortium somewhat similar to what I described to you as the Fresh Ministries Consortium in Jacksonville be formed to combine workforce development, county health, county public schools, and county agriculture into a consortium for the purpose of taking this somewhat practical approach and turning it into something that can, in fact, address the food desert issues that we have here in the county. I don't think this commission itself can do it by itself. There's just too many pieces. As Nia said, there's community development here, there's workforce development, there's Arundel Community College with its vocational training program, there are the feeder programs coming out of the county schools, there are the community organizations themselves. It's a wider problem that needs to be addressed in a wider manner, but in a narrow enough focus of activity so that a practical outcome can occur. It doesn't get dissipated into pieces of this and pieces of that without a single focus.
Yeah, you mentioned those four excellent ones, and the community college would be another one. And I would think the faith group, there ought to be some representation there because they're into a lot of that already. I would say, including the food pantries and all that kind of stuff. Well, there is an organization that has combined all the faith communities here in the county. It was originated last year. It's called ACT, Arundel something together, ACT. I think that would be the group that should be in the consortium, the ACT, because that's where all of the 70 some odd numbered faith communities across all the communities are in fact working together right now for things like homelessness and gun safety, working on a number of major initiatives. Well, and we talked about this maybe being bigger than just hydroponics and aquaculture. It might be the farmer's market. It might be. Yes, right. Okay. And I think I was able to convince Mr. Pittman and Dr. K, who's the director of the health department, to expand the requirement to accept SNAP and WIC to all of the farmers markets, not just the two in the county. So I think that is moving forward.
And typically the farmers markets are run through Maryland Department of Agriculture.
Yes.
And so, and somewhat, and also associated with Lisa Bard's office, the Economic Development Office. So that should be easy enough to do, to get WIC and SNAP as part of all those. Nia, then when you in Baltimore, WIC and SNAP must be a part of a number of those operations, right?
Yes, a lot of the urban farms in Baltimore accept WIC and SNAP. They've also very much valued the Double Dollars program from the Farmers Market Association, which enables them to serve underserved audiences a lot better. And I think another lesson from Baltimore is that the city making city-controlled vacant land available to people to start gardens and farms has resulted in a lot of places getting started. That policy is in constant flux, but I think the lesson from it is that when there's county or city-owned or controlled land, making it available to people to start gardens and to start businesses can be a really powerful thing.
The other thing comes to my mind is, so we we're going back to the Ag Commission at large with suggestions. How do you consider your role going forward in this group?
I'd like to be able to bring as much relevant information to whatever group gets together around this as much as possible. I'd be glad to take any role that would be appropriate to that. But I think there needs to be more authoritative, recognized lead on this. I'm just trying to bring this forward as a possibility and provide as much information as I can as to its practicality and the experiences that others have had doing things like this.
Nia, do you see Baltimore City groups reaching out to neighboring counties, Baltimore County, and Arundel? Do you see engagement there between across the county lines in the city and some of these endeavors, I guess?
Yeah, some of them, for example, Real Food Farm is a farm in the city that is working on building partnerships with farms in the county to source food for their CSA shares beyond what they're able to produce locally.
And that's Kana, what's his name?
Oh, no, that's actually a different one. So Kanav Kathoria, I emailed you about. He has an MOU with the women's prison in Jessup, and he is working on getting local fresh food into the prison commissary. So he's been doing a lot of listening sessions with the staff and with the inmates there about what they would like to see to improve quality of life. And he said they said they'd forgotten that berries were a thing because they haven't had fresh berries in so long.
It's hard to build something from ground zero, so that's why I'm saying it would be nice to network with really successful things that are going on, especially if they're crossing county lines and in the city. And I think substantially it would be better to join something that's doing well than to try to create something new.
I agree.
And so
I would also recommend the Black Church Food Security Network. They have a lot of faith-based organizations throughout the region, Maryland, south through some of the Carolinas, actually. But they're based in Baltimore City.
Bill, just some closing thoughts from you, Bill, about what do you think, how would you steer the Ag Commission in forward in the aquaponics area?
Well, no, I think you've covered a lot of what I was thinking in that, economically, I'm looking at this sheet here. This isn't the one I was looking at before, but I noticed a lot of establishment costs and these kinds of things, but we also probably need to do a market analysis too as to, are you planning to sell it, to give it away? So I think we need to look at the other end of things too, to how to not just establish it, but also to continue the operation, be through grants or donations or what have you. So it hits on everything we need to be working on cross programmatically. I represent just one programming area within the College of Ag's extension department. So involving Darren Jarbo at some level. I know he is actually working with Nia. You might know about this project, but he's actually done a little bit of a financial feasibility study with a group that I think was originally looking into hydro and aquaponics. I don't know if they decided to settle on hydroponics or not, but he's got a little experience doing some of these financial analyses for some companies, both in his old job but currently. And so I think he'd be great to help economically with it. He's connected pretty well with the, some pretty big players around the state. So I definitely would invite Darren. And he and I both work in the aquaculture arena just because it is, so heavily tailored for agricultural conditions. But also our FCS program leader, Jin He, with safe and healthy food supplies, with working with community development. We don't have a key programming area in community development anymore, but that is one thing that our director is very interested in starting to work in. This could possibly be a pilot initiative, both within University of Maryland Extension as well as one of the College of Agriculture's initiatives to work in these areas. So I think we'd receive a lot of positive support, if we were more inclusive at the administrative level within AG&R. I know this is just a preliminary discussion, but I would highly recommend we broaden the circle a little bit and bring some more folks in indirectly as we move forward. But I mean, we've talked a lot about this at the program leader meetings about working across these areas in key needed areas like food deserts and working in some of these areas. So, I'm very supportive. I am not an expert in this area at all, but we could definitely communicate with, better with those that are. So I'm thrilled that you're looking at this and trying to come up with some local solutions. So
Do you think we need to, I'm thinking we need like an executive director for, if we're really going to move this forward, there's going to have to be, like you say, a grant secured that basically pays an executive director of this consortium potentially.
you definitely need somebody that takes it and takes ownership of it, no doubt.
And
We mentioned USDA grants. I wonder if the Southern Maryland Economic Development Commission, if that's the right term, could do some searching to see what grants might be available elsewhere. It might be the Bill Gates or the John Deere or, quite a few other foundations that are out there putting money out for this kind of purpose, but somebody just needs to do the research.
Bill, do you think Chris Tellini or John Stofield, do you think they have any ideas about grant opportunities for something, aquaponics proposal?
I would think so. There's also the regional aquaculture centers. Are you all familiar with those?
Yes, yeah. Like Horn Point or whatever?
No, they're actually run by USDA, and University of Maryland is actually one of the hubs, so they manage the grant programs. But it's I think it's called the Northeast Region Aquaculture Center, NRAC, NRA. There's one in each major region, but just Google Northeastern Regional Aquaculture Center.
Is that in Baltimore?
No, it's Reggie Harrell with our organization manages it, and it's basically a grant program. But just Google Northeastern Regional Aquaculture Center, and you'll see that they provide about, it says $700,000 in grants. So this is one avenue. I know USDA is really ramping up, and so is NOAA through the Department of Commerce, ramping up aquaculture grants. So you'd have to write or find out what the parameters are for some of those grants. But I think there's some great opportunities to connect the two. Again, it's kind of a new I'd say new concept. It's been around for decades, right? But
yeah,
we have to reinvent the wheel, it seems, every 10 or 20 years.
Sure. Okay. So,
Well, these are resources and organizations that, even the studying I've done. Thanks to Bill, I'm hearing about these things for the first time myself.
yeah, okay, yeah.
And I don't know about the regional SARE programs either. You might know more, but Sustainable Ag Research and Extension, they've got grant programs. I'm not sure how large they are, but maybe we start small. I don't know if they've ever dealt with aquaponics, if that's one of their areas or not.
Yeah, I don't know
That would be worth a try. Demonstration and education is definitely what they usually fund.
Good. Yes, Sarah's they're difficult.
They're competitive.
Yeah, I guess that's a better way to put it. they're very you think they would be more open to some ideas, but they're a little bit more narrow, I think, in what they specifically want. So it's kind of like you have to kind of
Yeah. Coming from a forestry world, I know what you mean. Mhm.
World of radar. Yeah. Okay. We can find out what they're doing, and it might be an opportunity.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think?
I really appreciate the opportunity just to even bring this information to you, because this is something we have to address. We just can't let the situation continue to worsen.
Well, I did record this, and so I will send the recording out to everyone that was on the invite, and I'll send all the documents too. And we can mull over this for this little bit. We certainly have to down some things, and we'll reconvene the entire committee. Hopefully, the Ag Committee can reconvene and discuss a plan.
Okay, great.
That's where we're at right now.
Well, thanks for your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bill, great job. Nia, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation.
You bet. Hopefully this we'll get past this coronavirus quick and go out and help it.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll make the best of it while we can. And yeah, send any kind of documents on, and then Dave, if you want to talk, we'll follow up on who else to bring under the tent at the, UAB admin level. I'll be happy to talk with you about that.
Yep. I mean, I just want to, if we do something, I want to make sure we do it right, and we have a good chance at success.
Yes.
That's
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. We're going to
Sounds like
wrap it up.
really good.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
So, Dave, I think to have Dan